Hello, guys. Buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches. Welcome to yet another Spanish 101 video. In this one, we're going to cover a set of very important, very useful adjectives. They're known as adjetivos posesivos, or in English, possessive adjectives. First, I'm going to start by reminding you of what adjectives are. We discussed in a previous video that they are the words that we use to describe nouns, right? We take a noun and then we add an adjective to it in order to give some additional information about it, right? Tall, for example, is an adjective. You say the tall student, right? You're giving some additional information about that student, right? Regarding his or her height, right? Same thing with cold, happy, heavy, strange, or fast or slow, right? All of those are adjectives. All of those are words that are used to describe the things that nouns name, right? Well, today we're going to study, as I said before, a special kind of adjectives that is very important. They're called possessives. Now, probably many of you already have an inkling of an idea of what the possessive adjectives do, because possession means, owning something, uh, having it belong to you. So that is what possessive adjectives do. They describe nouns in terms of who possesses these things, who they belong to. Okay. Now, in the video about adjectives, I gave you a very important rule that states that, unlike in English, in Spanish adjectives go after the noun. In English, you would say the boring professor, but in Spanish, you would say el profesor aburrido. Aburrido goes after profesor, right? It is the opposite of English. This does not apply to possessives. In Spanish, possessives do come before the noun. This should actually be pretty intuitive for English speakers because English works in exactly the same way. Let's look at some examples. Mi casa. Casa, I hope you remember from the house vocab, is house, right? And mi casa, I'm just saying that it's my house, right? In English, you would say my house. In Spanish, you say mi casa, right? The possessive comes before the noun. Same with tu cuaderno, which means your notebook, or su bolígrafo, which is actually pretty ambiguous. It can be his pen, her pen, or their pen, right? Even its pen, if it belongs to like an animal or something. Nuestros lápices, those are our pencils. Nuestras ventanas, that's our windows. Okay? So possessives come before the noun. Now, what do they actually look like? Let's look at this table. Okay? Uh, Perhaps it's best if we start by looking at the far right, right? The translation so that you understand what's happening here. So on that third row, we have the equivalents of my, right? On the fourth row, we have the equivalents of your. On the fifth row, that's the one that's very ambiguous, we have equivalents of his, her, its, and their, right? All of those are the same in Spanish. And then we have the equivalents of our, right? Okay, now let's look at the actual Spanish. As you can see, these are divided in two big categories, singular or plural. I hope you remember that singular means one and plural means more than one, right? So possessives are adjectives, and like all other adjectives, they must follow the basic rule that adjectives correspond in gender and in number to the noun that they describe. Namely, if the noun that they describe is plural, they have to be plural. If the noun that they describe is singular, they have to be singular. If the noun they describe is feminine, they have to be feminine. If the noun they describe is masculine, they have to be masculine, right? That's the rule. Luckily, as you can see, mi, tu, and su do not change in the feminine, right? It's the same form for masculine or feminine, so you'd only need to learn one form here, right? So me means my, tu means your, su means his, her, its, or their, right? Now what happens to the plural? Well, it's fairly simple. You just follow the rules of the plurals, right? We said if stuff ends in a vowel, you add an S. That's exactly what you do. Me becomes mis, tu becomes tus, su becomes sus. When do you apply these? Well, when the thing owned is plural. When the thing owned is plural, you switch to these plural forms. We're going to take it slow with these because, in my experience, possessives can be quite confusing for people that only speak English. Why? Well, because in English, if you think about it, the possessive carries some information about the possessor. What do I mean? If I say his house, it's clear that whoever owns that house is a guy, right? A man. If whoever owns that house is a woman, I would say her house, right? That does not happen in Spanish. If we say a possessive and a noun, we have no idea what the gender of the possessor is, okay? We do have an idea of the gender of the thing possessed in certain cases, and we also have a very clear idea of whether it's one thing or more than one, okay? So adjectives in Spanish go with the nouns, and that happens as well with the possessives. They go with the thing possessed. So, mi casa, that would be my house. What if I am rich and have several houses? I would not say mi casas. I would use the plural of mi as well. I would say mis casas, my houses, right? Tu cuaderno, your notebook, tus cuadernos. Su cuaderno, sus cuadernos, and so on, okay? And the last row here is the equivalence of our, right? This is the one that has masculine and feminine forms. I think that the best way to think about this one is to think about it as a normal adjective that ends in O, right? Like aburrido, right? Aburrido has four forms, right? Because it becomes aburrida when it's a feminine thing, and then when it's plural, you need to add an S, so aburridos or aburridas. Same thing happens with nuestro. Nuestro is for one masculine thing. Nuestra is for one feminine thing. Nuestros is for one plural masculine, for more than one masculine thing, sorry. And nuestras is for more than one feminine thing, right? So casa is feminine. What if we have a house? Well, nuestra casa. I'm using nuestra because it's feminine and we have one house. What if we have more than one house? I wouldn't say nuestra casas. I would say nuestras casas. I would use the plural, right? So two simple rules here. Notice that all these change from singular to plural by adding an S, right? So constructing the plural is not that difficult. Just remember to add an S. And always take into account that the only one that actually has four forms, the only one that changes in the feminine is nuestro. All the other ones have just one form, and they change when they go to the plural. Okay? Let's look at how this actually works. Okay? Let's look at this table. This table has like objects, stuff, in the first column. I only used two words here, libro and casa, book and house, right? And then I'm saying who it belongs to. And I want to say the whole thing in Spanish. For example, libro and yo, that's book and me. So in English I would say my book, right? But I want to say it in Spanish. That's what I want to write in the third column, the one with the answers. So let's think about this for a second. Libro and yo. What is the possessive for yo? It's me, right? And it's only one book, so I don't have to use the plural, which means mi libro, my book. How about casa? Does mi change for the feminine? No, it does not. Nuestro is the one that changes, right? So I would say mi casa, my house, right? How about casas? Now I'm rich and I have a lot of houses. Does it change for the plural? Yes, I add an S. Mis casas. Now, libros, books, but they belong to you, right? So it's not me. What is the possessive for tú? It's tú, right? But does it change in the plural? Yes, it does, right? So it's not tú, it's tus libros, your books. What if it's only one book and it's hers, right? Libro, ella. What is the possessive for ella? It's su, right? So su libro, her book. What if it's a single house but it belongs to them, right? What is the possessive for ellos, right? It's su as well, right? Do I change to the plural? No, I do not. Why? Because I need to think about the thing possessed, not the possessor, right? I would say sus casas if they had more than one house, but since it's only one house, I say su casa. Okay? Now, how about a communal book, a book that belongs to us all, right? Now we need to use nuestro, which is the one that changes depending on the gender of the thing possessed and also depending on whether it's one or more than one. So it's one libro, and libro is masculine. So I use the masculine singular form. Nuestro libro, that means our book. Now it's several books that belong to us. We have a little library in common. Libros, I have to use the masculine plural. So I add an S to nuestro. Nuestros libros, our books. Now it's a house that we own in common, right? I don't say nuestro because I have to change this to the feminine. I say nuestra casa, that's our house. And now we are rich and we have several houses. I don't say nuestra casas because I also have to change this to the plural. So nuestras casas. This is the way that possessives work in Spanish. Again, don't feel frustrated if you find this, a somewhat difficult topic. It's counterintuitive for English speakers to think about the gender of the thing owned and not the gender of whoever owns it, right? When you're using these things. So you're going to make mistakes, don't worry. This is about practice and just getting used to it, and you'll get the hang of it in time. Gracias, muchachos. Hasta luego.